Doctor, I believe when we left off, I was asking you about the examination of Corey that you conducted. Could you please describe the examination that you performed on Corey?
Yes, so as I say, he had normal activity and alertness, was sitting up without favoring anything. His eyes, when I say eyes, were clear. I looked at the external, everything looked normal. The whites of his eyes looked normal. I looked inside his eyes with a ophthalmoscope and then into the back of his eyes, that was normal. I examined his ears, canal, and his tympanic membranes. The canals were clear. His throat was clear. He didn't have any redness of his throat. He had no signs of any viral. When I say viral stigmata, I mean he had no runny nose, no mucus. His neck, he could move it all directions. It was supple. He wasn't favoring it. And he had no what we call cervical adenopathy, meaning he had no enlarged lymph nodes anywhere on his neck. And the other thing that I look for when there's infection is if there's tenderness over the cheekbones, to look at the sinuses, and I checked them and they were not tender, and the other sinuses I palpated and there was no tenderness. I listened to his heart and it was a regular rate and rhythm. He didn't have any murmurs. He had normal heart sounds. And his breathing, I had already observed that he wasn't breathing fast or heavy. He wasn't sucking what we call labored, sucking his ribs in, making any effort. He was just breathing normally, quietly. And when I listened to him with a stethoscope, his lungs were clear. And he had what we call good air movement, meaning he had a full breath in and out. And I was particularly interested because some of I was interested in any rib injuries. In fact, I palpated all his, I had him lay down, I checked his abdomen, it wasn't distended. When I say HSMM, he had no enlargement that I could feel of his liver, his spleen, or any masses that I could feel. He didn't guard, because sometimes children don't tell you that things hurt. So I push hard, and there was no tightening of his muscles. There was nothing, and I listened to his bowel sounds, and meaning I listened with the stethoscope, and they were normal. So everything was good with his bowels. As far as neurologic, he was alert. When I say oriented times 3, he knew where he was, he knew who he was and who he's with. Checked pupils, their reactivity, and his eye movements, all his cranial nerves. There was no drooping. Everything, when he moved his mouth, there wasn't any drooping. And then I went on to look at his muscular skeletal system. I also I noted all of the findings on his skin. I can talk about them now, or I can complete the rest of the exam and then talk about that.
Could you tell me about the rest of the exam first?
Yeah. So I wanted to make sure he didn't have any injuries to his muscles or bones. So I had him raise his arms up over his head, and he could do that. He could move them every way I wanted. He could, I had him get off the table and walk for me and jump up and down without any difficulty, without favoring anything. He had a normal gait. And I checked all his muscles, which for me is he has to hold him out. I got to push him down. He's got to push me away. Laying down, he has to show me he has good resistance of all his muscles. And so absolutely nothing that I was worried about with his muscles or his bones. He had no swelling. I had him stand on each foot, and he could bear weight, because sometimes you've even, so I made sure he had no no problems with that. He had no swelling or warmth, anything that would suggest an infection of his skin, or any no swelling. And when I say no pain, with palpation of his chest, I push on all the ribs and all the bones to make sure that there wasn't any sign of rib or bone tenderness anywhere.
And doctor, were you making a pushing motion with your hands when you did that?
Yeah, so I'm making.
Is that in your rib area that you're
Yeah,
doing
all the
that?
ribs. I push every bone I can.
Okay. And up until that point, what you've testified to so far, did you make any findings or discover any problems?
No, and then I did check his genitalia, and there was nothing, no problems or masses or abnormalities there as well. The abnormalities that I saw were on his skin.
Okay. And did you document that anywhere?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Where did you document?
I have a body, I used a body chart because to be able to show and be able to remember where I saw any lesions on his skin.
Judge, may I approach the witness?
Sir.
Dr. Deacon, I'm showing you what's been marked as S43 for identification. Could you take a look at it for me, please?
Yes,
Okay. Do you recognize that?
I do.
What is that?
And this is my my body chart that showed that, and I have written down the lesions that I noticed on his body. It says it was done. I labeled it as 4/1/21 Breanna Micciolo.
And when you say his, you mean Corey's body?
Corey's body, yes.
Okay. And does S43 accurately depict the observations that you made of Corey's body when he was at the visit at your office on April 1st, 2021?
It does.
Okay. Could you take me through the observations that were on Corey's body that you documented, please?
Okay, so I'm going to start the head and work my way down front side of his body first. Present on his left forehead was what I described as pink granulation tissue with a tiny scab. What that means is that there was dry pink tissue with a little scab.
Doctor, could you
I'm
just tell me
pointing
when you
to-
point to a body part where you're pointing on
Yeah,
your
so I'm
body?
pointing to my left forehead. Second, there was a blue-gray bruise over his left cheek, and I'm pointing to the bone right here on his left side of his face. Number 3 was a large yellow-green bruise, and that was located overlying his shoulder, his trapezius, and I'm pointing to my left shoulder right here. Four was another large yellow-green bruise, and when we have the standing pose, the arms are like this, so it was on the left inner arm.
When you say standing like this,
I
are you
was standing with
your
my
arms
palms facing forward.
out? Okay.
The fifth thing that I noticed, or that I wrote down, was a blue bruise present over the elbow, and I'm pointing to the inner aspect of the elbow overlying the bone. On 6 was on the right side of his chest, and it was 2 areas of what I called hyperpigmented skin, which was the skin was white compared to the skin of around him. So for me, that means that was a healing an area of healing skin where it's healed, but the pigment hasn't come back yet. 7 that was my impression. The 7th was a linear scar. When I say linear, I mean like a line, and it was present on the right lower abdomen. Pink, and I called it a scar, pink scar. 8. These were superficial fresh scratches. They were located below the belly button, above the pubic bone, in the center of his body. By superficial, I mean they looked, I called them fresh because you could see that they hadn't formed a scab. There was like a little bit of moistness to them that looked like a scratch that just happened, or could have happened. 9 were blue bruises, and I made 3 circles, and they were located on the left lower leg, the front part of it, overlying the shin. So the area where the bone, you can feel the bone on the lower leg. And then 11 and 10 and 11 were what I described as tiny scratches on the lower front of his ankles, between the foot and the lower part of his leg. Okay, so now located on the back, his back of his body, so he'd be facing this way with the palms. 12 was a large yellow-green bruise, and that was located on the back of his left upper arm, overlying this kind of fatty muscle tissue. And 14 was another large yellow-green bruise, and it was located at the waist. Now I'm talking about this left side, right here, kind of over this upper part of the glute muscle. It's over the soft tissue.
Doctor, are you turning around when you show
I'm
us
turning
that?
around and I'm showing you my back left side.
Is that everything that you have on your chart, Doctor?
That's everything.
Okay. And were those 14
That was
areas of the body
14.
that you described?
Yeah, that last one was 14. Oh, and 13, did I describe 13? Was another bruise located on the elbow, on the back side of the, over that bony process of that arm.
Was that everything you did that was part of your examination then?
Yeah, just double check. That was all that was the extent of my exam.
Did you make a plan for Corey before he left your office?
I did. So, assessment is what we do after the physical exam. What is my assessment of Corey? And my assessment was normal bruises, numerous bruises with different stages of healing and healed abrasions, with a history of falling on a treadmill and getting hit with a football. Mostly over bony prominences, but some were over soft tissue areas.
What was the plan that you made for Corey?
So for me, there were bruises that you could explain, by the ones over bony processes with falling, with the play that children do. There's common areas where we have bruises, and then there's areas over soft tissue that it takes more of a blow, more usually, to have that size of a bruise and that kind of injury. That's why I was trying so hard to make sure there wasn't any underlying bone or just because they were so big. And so through my mind is, well, when you have those kinds of bruises, it takes either a bigger, harder force, or he might have a reason why he bruises easily. So I had said I want to rule out any bleeding or clotting abnormality because those children can have extensive bruising as well.
Did you make recommendations for Corey before he left your office?
Yeah, so I told Mom that we needed to bring him right. He needed to go right to the hospital. That we had to be sure that he wasn't at risk for even worse bleeding, and get blood work. And honestly, from what I learned and what he said and my whole impression of this visit, that he needed further, even if the DCP&P hadn't been involved, I would have called them. But I thought I'll send him to the hospital for a further evaluation because he needed more careful evaluation and expert interviewing. That's not my role as a general pediatrician. He needed more care before I would consider him safe to go home.
When you finished with your examination of Corey and making recommendations, did you contact anybody about Corey and your recommendations?
I did. So I called, this is now 5:45, 6 o'clock, it's getting late. And so I call when I have a concern, I have a careful record, but I wanted to also let them know what I was worried about. And so I called the emergency department physician. I had wanted him to go to Jersey Shore, but with time constraints from the mother, she did agree to take him right across the street from my office, not 5 minutes away, it was community hospital. So I sent him there. I called the doctor that it was going to see him there. And I called Mark, the caseworker from DCP&P, who had asked to be called after my visit to discuss my findings and concerns.
And was that your last personal involvement with Corey Micciolo?
Yes.
I have no additional questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Gooch.